Everybody, welcome back for another episode of What's Next. My next guest and I spend a lot of time doing just this stuff, but not recording and having a blast at it. And oftentimes our half hour turns into an hour or an hour turns into two. He's going to be a regular guest in the show. We're going to co-host a few shows, so that is to come. You're going to learn why as we get into this episode. But most importantly, I think you're going to get an insight from someone who has the really rare opportunity to sit with a lot of high performing athletes and coaches and to coach them and help them, and is now kind of re-engaged in being an entrepreneur. So Jeremy Eisenberg, welcome in. I'm so thrilled to have you on the show.
Pleasure is mine, Brian. Consider you one of the great minds in business and have learned so much from you. This is exciting for me. Thank you for having me.
No, it's going to be a good time. So almost 2 decades at Octagon, and we're going to talk about kind of all this as we go. You get 2 decades at Octagon, working with, again, some of the greatest coaches, celebrities, players. David Leadbetter, certainly a lot to be talked about there. Michael Breed, Paige Spiranek, countless others, and then across different disciplines. I know you and I have talked about that. And as you're working at a firm, and then you say, okay, not just all of a sudden, but I'm going to go on this journey by myself or with a few others that you've kind of had good relationships with in the past. Our audience is essentially right where you are. So that's why I'm so excited for this, because you are living proof that it happens and that it's going. So we have athletes and high performers that have kind of been there in a team, a pro athlete team or high performer at their firm, and then they've left or deciding to leave and saying, should I do it? Or I've done it. Holy crap, what next? So I'm excited to talk to you about that journey. But before we do, was there life for you as an entrepreneur prior to Octagon? Did you have that itch before, either as a kid or, an up and comer? And what was it like?
A lot of people have the shared story of selling baseball cards as kids, but actually I did that. But my first taste of entrepreneurship, I was getting a doctorate in genetics at the Medical College of Virginia while my wife was getting her MD. And I'm all about dissertation in molecular genetics, but took a sabbatical because sitting in the laboratories for hours upon hours, pipetting was pretty challenging for a pretty intellectually curious and active mind like mine. And my wife and I had just had our first child. And so I decided to take a sabbatical, and with sort of on the whim, a friend of mine and I started a little company manufacturing golf training products and creating golf content. This was back in the days of 2001, 2002, where the Momentous and the Medicus and all sorts of Greg Norman's Secret.
Now you're really pointing out the gray in my beard, because I remember every one of those.
I shaved a little bit. But there's plenty of gray in mine. But the Golf Channel in 2001, 2002 was probably more infomercials than it was original content. They didn't back then have the rights to the PGA Tour. And so without a single business class and really just the curiosity to what we might be able to do, my friend was a golf pro. We developed something that was unique, and we started networking our tails off in the golf industry and developing relationships. And right as I was thinking about going, we weren't very successful, but right as I was thinking about going back to grad school, David Leadbetter offered me a job doing business development and helping him bring some products to market. And he saw a young entrepreneurial guy that was willing to work really hard. And he had all sorts of things in the pipeline that he wanted to commercialize. And we can talk about this, but I really give David Leadbetter credit as one of the very first, certainly the first golf influencer, and perhaps one of the first people who really leveraged the democratization of content distribution to build a brand enterprise.
Yeah. It's interesting, that starting point, because he was sort of the godfather, not to date him that way, but to really, as a forward thinker. And I had the good opportunity, not spending as much time around him, but he used our video technology at V1 Sports. And I would say he was as influential for us as a company as we iterated and grew. And you got to see that through our original founder, Chris Hart, that David was just very open in his thinking. I think even, later as I came into V1, still sharing ideas, we were still learning. And as a growing entrepreneur, I thought, that's what it looks like. That's what abundance looks like, because it's someone willing to share without saying, hey, what's coming back to me? And so that's cool that we had that kind of shared experience. So you work with David. And then how does that continue to port forward, right? Because now you're in the golf industry. You're not going to be in a lab, which I can't fathom you in a lab coat being like a smarty guy like that, but go figure. How do you then say, okay, that's good. How are you spinning that up the ladder, so to speak?
In that instance, yeah, when I was working for David, I moved my family to Orlando, and we just weren't meant for Orlando. My wife is born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. At the time, we had two kids and she really missed home. And so we made a tough decision to move back to Virginia. I went to my network, got the incredible fortune to get an opportunity with Octagon that just happened to have a golf office in Richmond, Virginia, that I had developed a relationship with some of the folks in that office as an entrepreneur. And then, yeah, working for David and a famous amateur golfer named Vinny Giles, who's still, one of my true mentors and has been an incredible influence in my career. And a gentleman named Giff Breed, who happens to be Michael Breed's brother. They gave me an opportunity in the Richmond Octagon office and moved back to Virginia and put my head down and brought value in every which way I could to Octagon to ensure, frankly, that I could provide for my family first and foremost. Was really given an incredible opportunity sort of with this entrepreneurial mindset to really experiment at Octagon and develop new business opportunities for talent across the business that I'm incredibly grateful for, and have worked on some amazing projects with some amazing people, like you said, for the last 18 years, and learned everything and nothing, learned everything, but also learned I didn't know everything I needed to know. Certainly I had a lot more to learn. But as an entrepreneur working within a big agency model, there was incredible resources, incredible access, incredible, athletes. We represented Michael Phelps, who I was able to help, develop a golf initiative and a charity golf event and a Ping sponsorship and a role in another client, Hank Haney's reality show. I also helped early days with Steph Curry's exploration of his interest in golf and initiated some conversations with the PGA Tour that have led to all sorts of new opportunities for Steph in golf. But I was given the opportunity to make an impact where I could, but also build a business that was centered around content and the influence that content could have on human behavior. And golf's just one of those cheat codes in influencing behavior because of its propensity to consume those who love it, and drives all sorts of buying behavior and big decision making that has created $100 billion plus business.
Yeah.
Or
As
industry.
my wife reminded me today, as I'm coming back from a driver fitting, didn't you just get one of those 2 years ago? I'm like, yeah, but things could have totally changed. Could have totally.
About 2 years, that's an eternity. You're 20 yards behind according to most club marketing.
And unfortunately, unless the fix is completely on when they put me on the machines, any of the launch monitor data, it kind of shows that. And it's, man, they got me. So I'm going to take a half step back. You're learning these things along the way. And it's actually one of the things that I think really kind of drew us together in the beginning was you weren't just selling a service, right? I think there's a lot of agencies that can, trade time for money. It's selling a service. You were really responsible for building business units within a firm for individuals, which felt very unique. And I think to this day, even still feels unique. What are some of the things, thinking about our audience, what are some of the things that you were able to take away being part of that big team? Because I think if I'm, coming from my background as a pro athlete, we had dietitians and physical therapists and coaches and staff and video analysis. And man, when you go on your own, you are all those people, right? You don't have it. So what were you learning from the Leadbetters and the Haneys and Steph Curry and these guys as they were thinking about things? What were you learning that now you're kind of able to take out of the backpack and say, yeah, I can use some of that stuff?
My experience and really the foundation of how I built a business at Octagon was with the coaches initially and then broadcasters and then influencers happen. And I think there's continuity in what that is. But what I didn't get an MBA and in fact, never really sold anything. But what I discovered was that I can evangelize quite well for things I believe in. And I really took a solutions-based approach and was very fortunate. One of the first clients I had at Octagon was a legendary coach, Hank Haney, who was very focused on over-delivering. He wanted to ensure he had the great line. He was always the one who was going to be invited back. He was never going to leave early. He was going to interact with every single person at the event. He was going to, if they expected X, he was going to do X plus. And so with a client like that, and with the ability to build solutions for brands and for business partners that could really drive their business objectives, that's the whole point, certainly behind sponsorship, is those sponsors are trying to drive value for their businesses. They're trying to sell more goods and services. They're trying to reach more people, and you have to understand their objectives and you have to deliver upon them. And so I was raised by a lawyer and a artist. And so I'm sort of analytically creative and was able to assess all this data, understand, how these people could build platforms that had more and more value and more capabilities to drive more and more valuable solutions. And that solutions-based approach to really trying to understand our potential partners or existing partners' objectives, understanding their problems and what they're trying to overcome, what rocks are impeding their ability to achieve their objectives, and then identify solutions to those very specific problems with as broad and, hopefully valuable and, with as much hopefully compensation and value being exchanged as possible. And what's interesting there is it very quickly led to developing new businesses with a variety of very interesting companies, because if you believe in a solution so much that you're able to evangelize for it, then you should also be pretty comfortable having some skin in the game. And so that became an opportunity that I was lucky to have talented clients who believed in the solutions that we were presenting and creating as much as I did. And we were together creating these relationships and launching these new businesses that have created a lot of value for everyone involved. And, I think you look at the evolution of how athletes and celebrities look at their business opportunities. They want to be owners now. They don't want to just be paid shills. They want to be authentic. They want to have real relationships with audiences. You can only do that now with things that you can sincerely believe in, the Gen Z in particular, and millennials as well. Right through advertising, they can tell when someone's sincere and uses something or believes in something. And so the opportunity then for an athlete to actually own a piece of a business that they're creating, or a celebrity to own a piece of a business they're creating with business partners they believe in, and has never been more exciting. And frankly, is at the foundation of the business that I have launched in Talent Brand Labs. And with that same mentality for me that, I wanted, after many years of building these businesses for amazing people and, driving revenue for my company, I recognized that there was an opportunity to participate in these business opportunities alongside these incredibly talented humans. And so that's the foundation of what we're doing now.
Man, I mean, I think to bring it full circle, that's really cool, because I'm going to unpack a few of these things. I think as the listeners really trying to digest this quickly, is having some skin in the game. I think we always think about it's money, but first and foremost, it's sort of an ethos and a belief, right? I mean, I heard you loud and clear in there. And so I think whether you're owning and running a sports facility like I happened to do 23 years ago, or looking to invest in a non-alcoholic product for tomorrow's athlete, I'm just picking a couple of random things. When you believe in them, you then get to evangelize at a much deeper level because authentic, right? And then you talk about ownership, then having skin in the game now as a business partner kind of says, look, I'm not just trading time for money. Like, I'm in this with you. I'm going to put some things at risk because I do believe, like you believe, in wherever this is going. So I think those are really good nuggets, because as a high performer or as an athlete, if that's not the case, and I know this from you and I talking before, today's consumer will not only see through it, the longevity of it is very short, because you're going to burn out from it. You're not going to be passionate about it. And quite frankly, that's what it takes today. This isn't a set it and forget it world of entrepreneurism anymore. You've got to want to be in it. And when you do and believe in where you're going, it's very valuable. So I appreciate you saying that. So now you've got Talent Brand Labs, where you are doing literally what you just talked about. As you move into that market, my guess is you're having to do a little bit of education, because this is not something that's been around for 20 years. I mean, it really has been purely the agency model. You hire us, we do our thing, we go away, you go away. Now you're proposing we're going to have fewer clients, if you will call them clients, probably more partners. But when we get involved, we're thinking about 3, 5, 10 years down the road. I know you're in your sort of beginning stages of getting that going, right? But how has that been so far? I mean, has it been more education than opportunity? Is there a lot of opportunity but still needs to be educated, or something in between?
The education is sort of helping people understand the journey and the process of establishing their own enterprise
Mm.
and doing that sustainably rather than simply transactionally. One of the analogies I use with clients is as someone's gaining notoriety, gaining attention, opportunities start flooding in. And that's a wonderful thing. But you start letting the opportunity drive the strategy instead of the other way around. And so you end up getting pulled into different directions based on the tactical objectives of an opportunity coming from outside of your business enterprise that you're presented with. And the mindset of wanting to capitalize upon those opportunities while at the same time wanting to build a brand and build a sustainable framework to grow their business, they can conflict sometimes. And so the one thing never gets old, frankly, and is always underdeveloped, if not completely absent, is a plan based on a North Star objective. Here's what I want to,
Preach, brother.
here's what I want to build. And here's what it looks like. And here's how I want to be involved. And here's how I want to spend my time. And when you can get that on paper, it gives you a great framework to filter then all these opportunities that come flooding in and allows you to understand where each piece might sit and how you can, yes, we can do that endorsement deal, but it also can tap into a sponsorship of content you want to create or developing a product or a product line or a product drop that you've been aspiring to explore, and reversing the mindset of here's this opportunity, here's this set of deliverables, yes or no, to, okay, but what else can we do? And what other value can we create together? And how does that value align with what I'm building in a way that we can grow together?
I'm going to hit the pause button here. These are going to be in the show notes below, but Jeremy and I definitely share a very common theme in the North Star. For some of you, you're thinking, I don't even know what that is, or I think like it's, I'm really pointed at that, but okay, you guys call it the North Star. I might call it my pinnacle or whatever you call it. In the notes below, we'll give you an exercise that will take you through at least uncovering what that might be. And what I'm hoping that you hear in this is that without it, we say this about high performers and athletes, we are much more at risk of dying of gluttony than starvation, right? So I'm going to say that again, much more at risk of dying of gluttony versus starvation. The opportunities will come. It's more important what you say no to than what you say yes to. So understanding where you want to go, and then we distill that down to where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 3? How about 1 year? And then by each quarter, always pointed at that North Star. So those sort of frameworks will be in the notes. You don't have to fill them all out, but if you just get an idea of where you want to be, that's based on your ethos and your values, to what Jeremy's saying, it doesn't become simple, but it becomes a heck of a lot easier when you are looking at all of these opportunities, whether you're just getting started or you're bringing all of them with you from your pro sports days, your high performer days onto your own. It's a really great filter to say, okay, wow, that will be much easier to say yes or no to if I kind of stick to the plan, right? To distill it down to your words, Jeremy. So thank you. So you've learned that, you've taken that. I know you and I have talked about it's an iterative process. It's never perfect and it's never done. You're always thinking about it and coming back to it. Man, I got so many questions here. Without naming names, if we were to say of the people that you've worked with, who found it easier? Was it the guys and gals that were coaching? I'd say they were a bit on their own to begin with. Was it easier for them, or was it easier for team players to kind of identify with that North Star and build a plan? Or am I totally off base and it was neither?
It's a great question. I think it's really case by case. I think there are some team sports athletes who, are laser focused on day to day, the game, the off-season practice, the thought of retirement is something that their financial advisor handles, and there'll be enough money when they're ready to retire. And there are others who are thinking about it from the first day that they start participating in their sport. And in fact, now with the level of sophistication, I think this younger generation across the board, Gen Z in particular, is smarter than every other generation because they've had access to every piece of information that humanity has ever identified in the palm of their hand. And now AI is allowing them to ask any question and get a reliable answer and instantly to anything that they're looking for. So, I think that carries over to NIL and to athletes in general who now understand that with attention comes the ability to drive influence and drive value for business. And they're thinking about brands. They're thinking about their personal brand at a much younger age. Many of these athletes and personalities have already established social followings in their teens. So I think there's a lot more preparation going into those conversations earlier in people's careers than ever before. And I think that still doesn't necessarily mean that they're planning as strategically as they could. I think it's also important to keep focused on the task at hand, and high level competitive athletes are the best in the world at that. Under pressure, they are able to focus more than everybody else. And that's part of what makes them great. But they're also surrounding themselves with people who are able to execute plans that everybody has agreed on, I think, more than ever before. And I think the model is continuing to shift towards a team of people who can help advise an athlete or celebrity or an entertainer, around the whole ecosystem of needs that they have. And there may be an agent who's best served for the team contract, and there might be a marketing agent who's best served to develop brand deals, and there might be a Hollywood agent who's best served to develop entertainment opportunities, and there may be a financial advisor in the agency you're working with or outside the agency you're working with that is best served to handle your personal finances. And I think that sort of running your business as a CEO and putting the best people in the seat to deliver on your objectives is coming more and more into focus. And you see that being sort of the approach more and more with really exciting young personalities, athletes that are thinking about it. They're looking at it through this lens.
Yeah. So shameless plug for Talent Brand Labs here, because it's exactly what you've described. And I know that was not, you do a good job at tossing me softballs, but you and I have talked about this online. I think that's the place that an athlete doesn't have to, and I'd say high performer and athlete, I'm going to use them synonymously here. They don't have to be either or. I think the belief used to be you're either burn the boats at the shore, meaning I have no plan B, or I really like having a plan B, and meaning like I'm going to go moonlight, I'm going to go have a side hustle while I'm playing because I'm okay with that, right? That gives me a sense of security. That was more for me. I liked doing the stuff in the off season because I felt like it freed me up during the season, that if I broke my leg or my hand stopped working or whatever it was and I couldn't play pro soccer anymore, I kind of knew what was coming next. I've been around plenty of very high performers at much higher levels than myself who have said the off season was only for recovery and I was so laser focused on my career, and each worked. But I think what you're saying is it doesn't have to be either or. When you surround yourself with a good team who can do each of those things, you get to pick which one you want to be and not have to feel like there's a sacrifice. So when I look at Talent Brand Labs, and you and I have talked about ICR, the ideal customer relationship, who is it in your profile that you said, man, if they had 5 out of these 5 things or 10 out of these 10 things, and they were to come to you guys, you'd say, that's a really good fit for us because we know we're going to be symbiotic in our thinking?
Yeah. I've found that I'm able to evangelize the best when the thing we're creating is centered around someone's purpose.
Mm.
And that identifying your purpose, and your purpose can evolve through life. Mine certainly has. Your perspective on your purpose evolves. I love helping people, and I love the creative process of helping someone identify their purpose if they haven't really centered on it, and identify the path to achieve the objectives based on that purpose. And I think that when it's pretty easy to see when people are transactionally minded versus really excited to build something. And that for me is the most important piece is someone looking for an immediate check to roll up their sleeves and do anything. When you really lay out the work that's necessary to build towards an objective, do they start having second thoughts and start looking for someone who's going to deliver a bigger sponsorship check? We've been lucky, and I've built enough relationships with folks who, we had a pretty good understanding of where they could go directionally. And I think you can look at someone and the way that they communicate with their audience or with their partners, and you can see now the data speaks for itself. You can see who has high engagement. That engagement is driven by authenticity, period. End of discussion. And the algorithms in all these social platforms change so quickly that the only constant is organic social reach. And that is only driven by the evangelists of your brand, the people who have given you a seat at their table of influence. That when we were kids, it was our friends and our family and our teachers and our coworkers. And now alongside those folks are a series of influential voices out in the world who speak to us through all these different platforms. And if you're lucky enough to have a seat at someone's table of influence and you are doing anything other than being grateful for that and trying to provide value to them, then you're on unstable footing. If you're viewing that audience as a means to an end to make money, then I'm probably not the guy for you. We're probably not the organization for you. If you're looking to really establish a relationship with a community that can grow over time and that can develop solutions to real problems that you can be a part of bringing to that community, and you really are authentic and committed to it, there's endless possibilities because you build trust. And trust is like the air we breathe. And trust is not just, am I telling you the truth, but am I reliable? And am I an expert at my profession? Am I dependable? And, all sorts of these intangibles. There's a great book by Stephen Covey, the son of the 7 Habits writer, called The Speed of Trust. And I highly recommend it. One of my former bosses and mentors, Peter Carlisle, recommended to me originally, and it's fantastic. And part of the reason we gotten along so well is we established an incredible level of trust, Brian, you and I, early in our careers together, and we've had a lot of amazing interactions. And we would do almost anything professionally together that made sense because of that trust.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
That's crucial.
Totally.
Sorry.
No, I think you're spot on because it's about the nuggets of wisdom here. That's the entire premise of the show. Started with an idea about I'm doing mentoring. I know you've done mentoring. A lot of the guys have been around. It seems like a very common thread. And we ask ourselves, it's awesome, but how do we reach more? And I think this voice that you're talking about, this truth, trust, honesty, it's a recurring theme. And the audience knows this sort of from the premise of the show, which is we're about experience, not opinion. And so that's why I bring on guests like yourself who are going to say, yeah, I'm telling you about the experience side. There are life hacks for sure. It's a common nomenclature, but the reality is there's not a lot of shortcuts. It looks like hard work. You got to show up and do it. You got to be authentic. We are in the attention economy today, and it isn't about how high you wave your arms. It's how deep can you show somebody that you deserve a seat at the table or their attention. And I think when we're in that business, it says a lot about us as entrepreneurs. And I'm also speaking for the audience. If you want to have some longevity here, past your playing days, past your big corporate days, and wanting to really think about this as maybe the most fulfilling part of your career. And I know, Jeremy, you're embarking on this as well. That's where it comes from, is really surrounding yourself with people, a team, and not hopefully having any of them say, our job's to go find you as many shortcuts as possible. I think that's where you run for the hills, if I'm to be frank. It's about, we're going to dig in. We're going to do some work. We're going to find the best solution. And we're going to make sure that we protect you and your brand if you happen to be the face of the organization. So I think the segue out of that for me, as we kind of draw to a close, you've been doing it on both sides of the fence now. How have you found the ability to be husband, father, high-performing employee at one point in time, now entrepreneur again? What's been, I think Brian Buffini says it great, there is no life balance, it's balancing. I appreciate that, right? How have you done it? And again, I think our audience is saying, it feels like I am working 100 hours a week at times. How do you find that balance to still be present? Because I know you do that. So how do you find the ability to find that balance and be present?
It was my number one focus when I made the decision to launch Talent Brand Labs. I had become maybe a touch unbalanced in the corporate world and incredibly grateful for that experience, but at the same time, unforgiving in many instances. And I have 4 children and I have a wife who's a successful physician, and your own health and fitness is crucial. And something has to give when you're trying to balance if you're trying to do everything. And so I reached a decision where I wanted to prioritize my work and my health and first and foremost, my family, and structure that in a way that I could make a great living and build great businesses, but also not necessarily have to take every trip under the sun. And it's not easy. It definitely isn't. And I think it's one of those things that everybody struggles with, but I try to be present whenever I can. And another great hack, Cal Newport, time blocking is tremendously effective. These things that we have to do aren't going anywhere, but if you time block, you leave yourself enough time to do the things that you need to do. Being efficient with email and social media is critical. Those things can yank you back and forth all day to the point where you're not able to do more than 30 seconds of focused work before you're looking at something else. And I think that level of discipline, time blocking, and being present enough to press pause on what you're doing so that you can go make your kid lunch or go to a game or practice with your family, or put your phone down so you can eat dinner uninterrupted. I really work hard to do those things so that I can at least be as present as possible when I'm not here grinding. But the grind, I don't think ever stops, which,
No,
should be
no.
highly encouraging for top performers.
Yeah, exactly. For others to be like, holy crap, I'm getting the F out of here. I don't want any part of it. We've got a couple more questions, but if this is all you take away from this, Jeremy said, everybody goes through it. There is no more truer statement. Just on work-life balance, everybody's going through it. Whatever is on this is bullshit. Okay. That's someone's version of their perfect day, of their perfect life, of their perfect vacation, or their perfect entrepreneurial journey that says, I'm working 4 hours a week. I have plenty of time to do everything else I want. Don't buy the lie. Okay. Everybody goes through this challenge of work-life balance. And for a guy who has twin 23-year-olds, it's different for me than it is for a guy that has younger kids and 4 of them. Each of us is going to have a different journey, but please understand everybody will go through it. And so in that statement, just know that when everybody goes through it, everybody's got some experience, not opinion. Bring that back. Ask, right? Surround yourself with people who want more for you, believe in you. They'll share that story with you. I think that's a huge takeaway. I'm going to wrap us with 2 questions. I've got 50, but I'm going to keep it to two because there's going to be
We'll
episodes.
do it again soon.
Yeah, many more. So not prompted here. So, if you need a pause, take it. But I'd love to hear, what's your biggest F up that, either self-inflicted or one that you kind of lived and went through, that you were able to learn from that and then apply like 180 degree. Wow, that was a disaster. But then the next time I got a chance, I flipped it around and I was able to learn and do this.
God, that's a good one. I've had my fair share of screw ups without question. The real screw up, like you'll hear a million times, is not learning from those screw ups. But I can remember one in particular. A client was on a book tour and he did an interview with a very outspoken radio host. And he basically the radio host didn't agree with the premise of the book and really eviscerated the client. And he was brave enough to stay on the phone and answer more questions with this guy who was just calling him pond scum and all sorts of other terrible things. And then he hung up after the interview, and the client called me and said, that was awful. Can we see if we know anyone who might be able to dress that guy down, or at least tell him how inappropriate that was? And I wrote a note to a very influential, one of the most powerful people in entertainment, who was a friend of ours. And I said, how do we cut this guy's head off? And he immediately forwarded it to CEO of CBS and the CEO of Yes Network and MSG, who were two organizations that he was affiliated with, into what can we do? And I certainly wasn't the way that I intended to represent myself through, communicating with executives at that level, that was a great lesson in writing every email as though it's going to be on the front page of New York Times. Let's see. There are a few others, but that was a great lesson. Another time I was on a call representing a client with the CEO of a big public company and, three or four members of his team. And you would never know it that I learned any lessons based on, how long-winded I've been on your podcast here. But I got on the call and I started talking about the deal for what felt like a brief period of time. But the CEO said, "Let me stop you there, Jeremy. We've been on this call now for over 2 minutes and you've done nothing but talk. And I'm not really sure what you said." I said, so that was, for me, that was like, oh boy, I got to rein it in on my long-windedness. I still ramble, and it's sort of the nature of being a creative, analytical mind, perhaps, but I've certainly gotten better since then and am very self-aware as being concise as the opportunity allows it to be.
I like your first one, which was also write an email as if you would expect it to be on the front page of a newspaper, right? So I think that lens can oftentimes, in the sports coaching world, I had the very good fortune of coaching my boys up through the age of 15. And I reminded every parent when we had our first parent meeting of the year, right after the game, the 24-hour clock starts, right? So do not send me a text or an email until literally 24 hours and 1 minute. A lot will happen in that time. And I knew that as both a parent and as a coach. And I think the same thing, right? When you sort of catch your breath, think about what you're writing or saying, make it shorter to your second point, maybe, but sort of make it on point that you would hope if it got forwarded, you'd be okay with that. I think those are good quips of wisdom. Okay, last one. Jury is out, I think, across the entrepreneurial world. Do you believe in luck? Right? Because there are some that
Absolutely.
Okay. So
I
give me my
absolutely
Sports Center
do.
version of, you said absolutely, you didn't have to think about it. Why do you believe in luck? And yeah, give me some thoughts on that.
I had the good fortune during my time at Octagon working and representing Gary Player. And he's famous for the quote, "The harder I practice, the luckier I get." You cannot control the circumstances that surround you in any given situation. There's the stuff that matters and there's the stuff you can control. And those two circles overlap. And you should really only focus on things that matter and that are within your control. And those things that are outside of your control that will impact the outcome of whatever it is you're doing, you do need to be lucky that things don't go wrong on things that are outside your control. And if you can't control them, you have no real ability to ensure that. And so you can try to engineer yourself to be as far away from things that you can't control as possible. You can establish controls for those unexpected things that could come your direction, but ultimately it's out of your control. And so the luck of things going your way or getting unlucky that things don't go your way is real. And I haven't met many people who wouldn't recognize the role that luck played in their success. But the best performers in the world, and look at Steph Curry is a great example. They train so hard that they neutralize luck to the extent possible, and luck as a factor. And so I think that's my point of view is what can I do to eliminate the role luck plays in every situation I'm in so that I don't have to depend upon it? Because that's, any strategy that includes luck or hope, I'm very dubious about any strategy that has both as a pillar.
It's great you say that because Napoleon Hill is pretty famous in Think and Grow Rich, which, going on over almost a century, is just that premise, right? That yes, luck plays a part, but are you climbing the ladder high enough that it can find you? Because if not, if you're waiting at the bottom for it to, sneak around, it oftentimes does not. And those that are climbing the ladder, which is all that hard work, oftentimes put themselves in the path of luck. And it does take a bit for sure, right? Some it's huge and others it's just little pieces at a time. But I love that question because everybody has a different take, which is awesome. Okay, so I'm going to make this statement for you because I know it to be true. You do love helping people. You said that here. I've seen you and your generosity reach across all different enterprises and markets. If people want to find you, follow you, especially on the company side, where do they find you on the web? Where do they find you on social?
Email is the best way to track me down, Jeremy at talentbrandlabs.com. And I'm on Instagram, J Eisenberg, on Twitter a little bit, also J Eisenberg, but I probably don't practice what I preach enough with my own social. It certainly could be better. If I was advising myself, I would have made a bigger emphasis on regularity.
All right. So there's a little dose of humility at the end. Love it. All of those contact points will be in the show notes below. So if you've enjoyed it, as always, we ask you to drop a few comments, right? What did you like? What do you want us to ask more of or do more of? I'm going to say you don't really get a vote. Jeremy's coming back, but if you'd like to see him back, thumbs up. If not, you can skip that episode, but I think you're going to enjoy it. We've got a bunch of topics to cover. Subscribe. That's the way we help do what we do, reach more people. That's the idea. And, in the end, our firm belief not only is that it's about experience, not opinion, but it is not about what you did yesterday. As per our great guest here in the last 2 decades of being in something, it is about what's next, right? Can you control the controllables and really be great at what you do next? Build a team, surround yourself with awesome people, and it's all but a guarantee that luck will find you at the top of that ladder. So thank you for joining us on this episode, and see you on the flip side. Thanks.